Kumar and myself started on our spiritual journey almost around the same time. I think he was 1 year senior to me. We both started from the Albany Center. And he always used to beat me in the quiz that Rasnath Prabhu used to give us. And after a couple of failed attempts, I gave up to chase his score. He used to always ace the quiz. And he was the first one from our group to get initiated. And he's very scholarly, topper at university, topper in the quizzes at the temple. And as I said earlier, a very close friend now from the 2002 time. And even now, he's been very helpful, both he, his wife, Nitya Kishori, and they've been organizing prayer sessions in our old group for Krishangi's health and recovery. So we are very grateful to him. I'm very grateful personally also for his friendship and association, and very grateful for agreeing to give this class today. Okay, thank you very much, Gaur Kumar. It's 4:01 p.m., so you can get started now.
Thank you so much, Amrit Keli Mataji, for your kind words. I just want to just see if my audio is clear.
Yes, Prabhu, we can hear you clearly.
Okay. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktaranda. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhu evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Thank you so much, Amrit Keli Mataji, for inviting me. I also want to seek the blessings of Pyare Mohan Prabhu and Jiva Mataji. Please bless me so that I can speak something in line with Guru Parampara and something that can be helpful on your spiritual journeys. Thank you so much. So when I asked Amrit Keli Mataji, why me? I mean, there are so many amazing speakers that she could have picked. So in this context, I just want to share one joke. So there was this one patient who was in an hospital, and he was about to get his surgery done. So just when he was about to get his surgery done, he actually ran away from the operating theater. He ran away not only from the operating theater, he ran out of the hospital and he went to his home. So his relatives asked him, why did you run away from the hospital? Why did you run away from the operating theater? You were supposed to get your surgery done. Then he said, while I was laying down and I was about to get the surgery done, the nurse next to me said, don't worry, everything will be okay. And she didn't say that once. She said it 3 times. Don't worry, everything will be okay. Don't worry, everything will be okay. Don't worry, everything will be okay. Then his relative asked, okay, that's the duty of a nurse. Why would you run away? I mean, the nurse is supposed to console you in this way. So for that, he said, but the nurse was not talking to me. She was talking to the doctor who's going to do the surgery. So similarly, I also feel like the doctor, totally unqualified to be speaking in front of all of you amazing devotees. So please bear with me while we share some lessons about Bharat Maharaj and Indradyumna Maharaj. There are many similarities and there are some differences also. So we'll address them. So first of all, I would like to start by talking about 4 main reasons for doing any activity. And this is from Chaitanya Siksamrita by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So the lowest level for doing any activity is fear. So I'll just mention some examples. You can think of many examples. When I was in India, my mom used to tell me that if you don't go to the temple, the Lord will punish you. So I started going to the temple because I was fearful that if I don't go, something bad is going to happen to me. So that is the lowest level. Or even kids. When I was a child, I did not like going to school. Again, I had the fear that if I don't go to school, I would get punished by my parents. So that is the lowest level for doing any activity. The next level is reciprocation. We could be going to work because we are getting something out of it. We're getting a paycheck. Or we could be going to temple so that we ask for some deal with the Lord that, okay, I'm coming to you now. Make sure you pass me in this exam. It's almost like a business deal. So it's almost like a reciprocal thing. So it's better than fear, but it is not the best. The next level, according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, is duty. Now, duty is higher than reciprocation and fear. Duty is like having a sense of doing it on a regular basis. It is my duty to go to the temple every Sunday. It is my duty to work and take care of my family, and so on. Now, this duty is actually very tricky because it can put you in what is called the mode of goodness, which can actually become a trap. I'll explain this later. But even duty is not the highest level for doing any activity. The highest reason for doing any activity, ideally, should be love. We should be going to school because we love learning something new. We should be going to work not because of our paycheck, not because of any other reason, but we should be going to work because we love working. We love doing what we do. So these are 4 reasons for doing any activity, not just spiritual activities. These can be categorized into the different modes. For example, fear is in the mode of ignorance. Reciprocation is in the mode of passion. Duty, as I mentioned, is in the mode of goodness. And love is in the mode of pure goodness. As Srila Prabhupada mentioned several times, we have to be in the mode of goodness before we even try to go into the mode of pure goodness. But staying in the mode of goodness for too long is not recommended. Prabhupada mentioned that the mode of goodness is like an airport. You go there just so that you take off immediately. You don't go there and stay there for too long. So I'll illustrate this with one example of how one can get stuck in the mode of goodness, not just for this lifetime, but for several lifetimes. So in this particular example, there was a dutiful Brahmin who used to wake up every day at exactly 4:30 a.m. and chant his Gayatri mantra. It so happened that one day he was not able to wake up at 4:30 because he had slept late the previous night. At exactly 4:29, someone woke him up. He did not even bother to see who woke him up, but the fact that he woke up at 4:29 made him happy, and he immediately chanted his Gayatri mantra. And he felt good. He felt really good about it, that he had never broken his vow of chanting Gayatri daily. So later on, he started pondering, who was it that woke me up at 4:29? When he thought about it more deeply, he understood that it was actually Kali personified who woke him up at 4:29. Why would Kali wake him up at 4:29? Because he was stuck in this mode of goodness, and because of that, he was proud of what he was doing. He was proud that every day he was waking up at 4:30 and doing his Gayatri mantra. And because of that, Kali personified woke him up at 4:29 so that he would not get humbled. Kali personified wanted him to remain in that state of pride. And that is the reason why it is recommended that we don't get stuck in duty or in the mode of goodness, but we grow beyond it. In Srila Rupa Goswami's Padyavali, there is a verse which talks about this. So here it is said that pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness cannot be had even by pious activities in hundreds and thousands of lives, which means we could get stuck in this mode of goodness in hundreds and thousands of lives. It can be attained only by paying one price, and that is the intense greed to obtain it. So how do we go from mode of goodness to pure goodness? We must have that intense greed, that intense eagerness to move from this mode of goodness into the mode of pure goodness. If it is available somewhere, one must purchase it without delay, is what the verse says. So now that we have talked about love and talked about pure goodness, let's look at the definition of Uttama Bhakti as defined by Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu. And this is a famous verse. Most of you will know this verse. It's Anyabhilashita Shunyam Jnana Karmadi Anavritam Anukulyena Krishna Anushilanam. So he mentions 4 characteristics. Anya Abhilashita Shunyam. That means no other desires other than to please the Supreme Lord. That is the first characteristic. The second characteristic is Jnana Karmadi Anavritam. That means our bhakti should not be covered over by jnana or karma. The third characteristic is Anukulyena. Anukulyena means favorable. And the last characteristic is Krishna Anushilanam, which means serving Krishna with our body, mind, and words. So these are 4 characteristics according to the definition of Uttama Bhakti. Now, our acharyas explain that these 4 characteristics can be broken down into primary characteristics and secondary characteristics. So primary characteristics are those that if we remove those 2, then there will be no bhakti at all. And secondary characteristics are those that if we remove that, then it would not be pure bhakti or uttama bhakti. So what are the 2 primary characteristics and what are the 2 secondary characteristics? Let's analyze this a little bit. So the primary characteristics, according to our acharyas, are Anukulyena and Krishna Anushilanam. So as I mentioned before, Anukulyena means favorable and Krishna Anushilanam means doing service with our body, mind, and words. So that is why Srila Prabhupada emphasized on devotional service, because those are the primary characteristics. So you perform something with devotion favorably and you do some service. So you perform devotion and you do it as a service. So that is Anukulyena and Krishna Anushilanam. And Anu means consistent. You consistently keep doing this service over and over again. So these are the primary characteristics. Of course, the secondary characteristics are Anyabhilashita Shunya. So Anyabhilashita Shunya means you have no other desire other than to please the Lord, right? So when I say no other desire, so supposing we have a desire for liberation. If you're performing bhakti with a desire for liberation, that cannot be considered uttama bhakti or pure bhakti. Or for example, the next characteristic, jnana karmadi anavritam. If our bhakti is covered over by jnana, if it is jnana mishra bhakti or karma mishra bhakti, that is also not uttama bhakti. That is still bhakti though, but it is not uttama bhakti. Now, out of these 4 characteristics, the most important characteristic is Anukulyena. So Anukulyena, there could be 2 possible definitions. Anukulyena, as I mentioned, is favorable, doing favorable service to Krishna. So Anukulyena can have 2 definitions. One is that which is pleasing to Krishna and that which is done for pleasing Krishna. Now, both of these seem very similar. I'll just give you a couple of examples. So for example, let's take some of these demons, like the Keshi demon, Kamsa, Chanur, Mushtika. So when they were fighting with Krishna, apparently it was pleasing to Krishna. So, but were they performing bhakti? They were not performing bhakti. So the correct definition is that which is done for pleasing Krishna. Now let's take another example of Yashoda Mai. So when Yashoda Mai put Krishna down from her lap to take care of the boiling milk, it did not please Krishna. But she was doing it so that she could take care of the milk, which was meant to make milk sweets for Krishna, which was meant to make yogurt for Krishna. So she was doing that activity for pleasing Krishna, even though it may not apparently please Krishna. So that which is done for pleasing Krishna is the correct definition of Anukulyena. So also this particular verse, Anyabhilashita Shunyam Jnana Karmadi Anavritam Anukulyena Krishna Anushilanam, these 4 characteristics come across in several other verses, even in the Bhagavad Gita. There are parallels to this particular verse. For example, in the Narada Pancharatra, we can map exactly these 4 characteristics into that particular verse. For example, Anya Bilashita Shunyam matches to Sarva Upadi Vinirmuktam. Jnana Karmadi Anavritam maps to Nirmalam. Anukulyena maps to Tatparatvena. And Krishna Anushilanam maps to Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam. So there is a one-to-one mapping, not just between this verse and the verse at Narada Pancharatra, but there are several verses in the Bhagavad Gita wherever pure devotees' characteristics are mentioned, we can actually see this kind of mapping. So let's move on. Now, when we talk about pure devotional service, and on this journey of bhakti, we always have this choice. Are we loving Krishna more, or are we loving our ego more? The example that I would like to share is between Duryodhana and Arjuna with Krishna. So this was the time just before the Kurukshetra war, where Arjuna and Duryodhana approached Krishna. And Krishna had made it clear that either, first of all, he was not going to take part in the battle, but he would give his Narayan Sena, a huge, vast army, right? And so Arjuna and Duryodhana had this option of choosing one or the other. So even though Duryodhana came early and Arjuna came late, when Krishna opened his eyes, he saw Arjuna first, because Arjuna was at Krishna's feet. And Krishna said that, Arjuna, you can go first, because first of all, I saw you first, and you are the younger brother in this particular, younger cousin brother. So Arjuna said, Krishna, I just want you and you alone. So this is an important characteristic in our lives also that we should try to implement. This is called ananyata, or exclusive devotion to Krishna and nothing else. Whereas Duryodhana, on the other hand, he had more faith in Krishna's energies than in Krishna. He was eagerly looking forward to getting that huge, vast army, the Narayan Sena. So he was very happy when Arjuna chose Krishna. And he immediately said, okay, I have no choice. I'm going to choose the Narayan Sena. So Duryodhana was actually fighting for the wrong cause. He was actually fighting for his own false ego. Now, similarly, we also sometimes have these desires, these material desires. And these material desires can actually conquer us, they can captivate us, they actually cheat us, and they can also trap us. So one example that I'd like to share is that all our senses and sense objects are so designed that we always look outward. And when we're looking at the sense objects outside, the senses capture those sense objects and program our mind. And the way they program our mind is that once the mind is programmed with all these sense objects, the output is that the mind creates more desires, more material desires. So as we get in more sense objects, we get more and more material desires. So that is how it is designed. So I just want to share one funny story about what happened in a railway station in India. So this was a few years ago when a person was selling fans, those handmade fans at the railway stations in India. So typically other people were selling it for 5 rupees and this person was selling it for just 25 paisa for each of those hand fans. So this one particular person saw that and he felt it was a great deal. Why should I spend 5 rupees when I can just spend 25 paisa and get this fan? So he ran towards that person, he gave him his 25 paisa, and then he got hold of that fan and he went and started to use it. As soon as he shook it once, the fan broke. And immediately he started wondering and he was upset. So he chased down that person and asked him, hey, I just used your fan once and it broke. So what is the reason? So that guy said, you asked me for the deal and you got the deal, but you did not ask me how to use the fan. The way you use the fan is you should hold the fan and shake your head. You're not supposed to shake the fan. So this is how material world and material desires cheat us and trap us. Even as devotees, we are not exempt of this, whether we love Krishna more or whether we love our ego more. For example, I can share my own personal experiences. When I initially started dressing the deities, I used to always think, instead of me focusing on dressing the Lord, I started focusing on how people would react by looking at the darshan. Will they start praising me? Will they start thinking, oh, this pujari has dressed the deity so nicely and so on? Or even when we are cooking, we could think in two ways. I'm cooking for Krishna, or I'm cooking so that devotees please my cooking. Devotees glorify my cooking skills. So it is always a question to ask our motive. Are we really doing it because we love Krishna, or are we really doing it because we want to please our own false ego? So how the material world traps us. Once when Srila Prabhupada was on the Venice beach, it was during one of his morning walks. It was a very, very scenic view. The sun was rising, a beautiful beach, the ocean was seen. And a couple of devotees mentioned to Prabhupada that Srila Prabhupada, see how beautiful the scene is. You know, the sun is rising, the ocean is there, and so on. And immediately Srila Prabhupada corrected them and said, this is just like the material world. It is beautiful from a distance. The moment you go close to it, you could get trapped. And this happened in a yatra in Jagannath Puri, where this was a yatra with His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj. And devotees were warned not to swim in the ocean on one particular day because there was a high tide or something, and devotees were seriously warned. But in spite of that warning, one devotee who was very overconfident, he said, nothing's going to happen to me. Let me try to swim. And so he got into the ocean and started swimming. Other devotees had warned him not to go in, but still, because of his overconfidence, he did it. And the current kind of started pulling him towards the ocean. And at one point, he lost control and he started raising his hands. And then the devotees on the beach were thinking that, oh, he's saying Haribol, Haribol. So everybody were raising their hands. But actually, he was calling out for help. He was calling out for help. And one devotee actually noticed that and said, no, he's not saying Haribol. He's calling out for help. So let's go and save him. So eventually, they ended up saving that devotee. But the point here is that overconfidence gets us in trouble. Devotees who did not know swimming or knew a little bit of swimming did not even venture that. It was only the devotee who was overconfident got trapped. So the feeling of happiness one gets in this material enjoyment is actually the enemy of the conditioned soul. The more happier we become because of material successes, the more trapped we become, because you start feeling that, oh, I'm succeeding in this world, I'm succeeding in this world, and you keep getting trapped. So that is one lesson that we learn. And another example that I'd like to share is between Srila Prabhupada and Shyam Sundar Prabhu. So this was when Shyam Sundar Prabhu was actually carving the Balram deity in San Francisco. And while carving the deity, he had kept a pack of cigarettes on the deity of Balram. Srila Prabhupada saw it. Of course, he did not chastise him at that point, but he said something very profound. He said, don't let this pack of cigarettes come between you and Krishna. And immediately, Shyam Sundar Prabhu got the point, and very soon he got rid of his addiction towards cigarettes. Now, we might think that, oh, it's a pack of cigarettes, we don't smoke as devotees, so we are fine. But we have something similar to a pack of devotees, which is our cell phones. It almost looks like a pack. And this particular cell phone, we are all addicted to it, at least I am. So this addiction is also equally dangerous. This one phone can come between us and Krishna if we don't use it properly. Of course, if we use it just for the service of the Lord, then it is perfect. Then, because of this, as devotees in this path of bhakti, we get lots of doubts and fears, especially fears of failures. What happens if I don't succeed? What happens if I don't make it in this world as a devotee? So for that, there is a promise, which is a very nice verse by Narad Muni, who says that once we get on this path, once we enter the temple, once we are practicing um, on this path of bhakti, we have this inextinguishable longing for Krishna, and nothing can take that away from us. So this is a conversation between Narad Muni and Vyasadeva, where he says, even though a devotee of Lord Krishna sometimes falls down somehow or other, he certainly does not undergo material existence like others, like fruitive workers, etc. Because a person who has once relished the taste of the lotus feet of the Lord can do nothing but remember that ecstasy again and again. That is why Srila Prabhupada always told his disciples to take care of people who enter the temple, who enter the temple room very nicely. Because he said that these are people who have been invited by Krishna himself, and so we should take care of them nicely. So even if we fall, we should fall in Krishna, but don't ever fall away from Krishna. So don't try to go away from Krishna consciousness. Don't try to leave the movement. There have been many cases of devotees who have tried to leave the movement, but then they feel that there is something missing because they once relished it. They once relished the ecstasy and the bliss of devotional service. So then they eventually try to come back into this path. So how does Krishna help us? Krishna can help us in three ways. Krishna can help us directly, Krishna can help us indirectly, and sometimes Krishna can even misdirect us. So let's take some examples of Srila Prabhupada in this case, Prabhupada's life. So in Srila Prabhupada's life, Krishna helped by giving him a direct instruction from his guru. So this was a direct instruction. You must go to the West and preach Krishna consciousness in the English language. So indirect, how can Krishna help us indirectly? So this can happen through someone else who might be giving us some instruction which can actually help us in our bhakti. So in the case of Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada started by writing magazines. So he was going door to door, from hotel to hotel, restaurant to restaurant, trying to distribute these magazines. And it so happened that there was one person who saw this, one totally random person. And then he told Srila Prabhupada that why don't you stop writing magazines and start writing books? So Srila Prabhupada, even though this was indirect, it was not a direct instruction from a guru or Shiksha Guru or Diksha Guru, it was an indirect instruction from somebody, from some random person. So Srila Prabhupada took that instruction to heart and started writing books. And that is how it started. And sometimes on this path, we could get misdirected also. And those misdirections are actually tests. So misdirections could be tests. So on this path, as practicing devotees, we could be tested several times. So for example, in the case of Prahlad Maharaj, Bali Maharaj, Ambarish Maharaj, they were all tested. They were all tested. And in all of their cases, their absorption in Krishna consciousness did not change. They were completely focused in their absorption. And so we can understand God's protection, like for example, in the case of Prahlad Maharaj, the miracle is not that Prahlad Maharaj was protected from death, but the real miracle is that his absorption remained uninterrupted, even amidst so many death threats. He was thrown into a pit of snakes. He was about to be trampled by an elephant, but still in all these pictures you see, he was completely focused in his absorption towards Krishna. So that absorption is what is necessary. So understanding God's protection, of course, Krishna promises us, Kaunteya pratijanehi name bhakta pranashyati. O son of Kunti, declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. So when Parikshit Maharaj was in the womb, he was protected by Krishna. The same Parikshit Maharaj, when he was cursed by the Takshak bird, why was he not protected? It turns out that in both of these cases, Krishna actually protected Parikshit Maharaj. In the first time, he was protected materially. And in the second time, Parikshit Maharaj had completely transcended this material platform. He had completely transcended this material platform. He had heard the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. So in one sense, he had received protection already. So he received spiritual protection when the Takshak bird was actually about to bite him. He had gone beyond the material platform. So absorption leads to protection as it elevates one's consciousness. And absorption in Krishna will take us to Krishna, guaranteed. So now let's look at today's two pastimes, Bharat Maharaj and Indradyumna Maharaj. So Bharat Maharaj and Indradyumna Maharaj had several similarities. So both of them performed the prescribed duties perfectly. They both were called Raja Rishis. The word Raja Rishi is a combination of two words from Raja. Raja is the mode of passion, and Rishi is like a saint. So externally, even though they were performing their kingly duties in the mode of passion, internally in their core, they were actually rishis. They were always focused in their absorption of Krishna. So both of them were Raja Rishis. Both of them left to the forest after performing their prescribed duties. Both of them were tested by Krishna. And both took animal bodies in the next life. But even though they took animal bodies in the next life, they did not lose their spiritual attraction. So these are the similarities. Now let's look at some differences. So let's look at first Bharat Maharaj's story, and then we'll go to Indradyumna Maharaj. So Bharat Maharaj's story teaches us this particular point about compassion versus compromise. So as we all know, the devotee's compassion is born out of his practice of bhakti. So was it wrong when Bharat Maharaj saw a doe which was jumping across a river and gave birth to a baby deer? Was it wrong for Bharat Maharaj to protect and save that baby deer? Was it wrong? So the answer is no, it was not wrong. It's as we see in this verse from Padma Puran, it is said, "He who worships the Lord is pleasing to all living entities, and all the inhabitants of the world, both moving and non-moving, are pleasing to him." So in one sense, this compassion that Bharat Maharaj showed towards the deer was not at all wrong. In fact, it was necessary. In fact, it was part of his apad dharma or emergency dharma, because Bharat Maharaj saw this happening in front of his eyes, and there was no one to protect that baby deer. So by him protecting the baby deer, he did absolutely the right thing. But then what was the mistake? He got so caught up in thinking that he's the maintainer of that deer that he started compromising on his sadhana. He started compromising on his spiritual practices to such an extent that he started ignoring his spiritual practices and so on. And then even at the time of his death, he was not able to think of the Lord, but he died thinking of the deer. So this point about compassion and compromise comes up in several other instances also. In fact, the entire reason why the Bhagavad Gita was spoken was because Arjuna became extremely compassionate towards the people on his side of the army, and also later towards the people on the other side of the army. And it is because of this compassion that he started compromising on his dharma. His Gandiva bow slipped. And it took Gita wisdom. Krishna had to reveal the Gita wisdom to Arjuna and then make him understand that you're not supposed to compromise on your dharma. And that led Arjuna to pick up the Gandiva bow again. Another instance is with Ajamil. So Ajamil was bewildered by lust when he saw a prostitute embracing another person. And in this bewilderment, he lost all compassion for his family members. And not only that, he completely compromised on his spiritual practices also. And so what is the ideal example? The ideal example is Srila Haridas Thakur, who, when a prostitute was sent by Ramchandra Khan to seduce him, he could have done two things. First of all, Haridas Thakur knew that Ramchandra Khan had sent this prostitute. he could have done two things. He could have rejected her, or he could have gone to another village. He could have just left that place and gone to another village. He did not do both because he was compassionate towards that prostitute. He showed compassion on her. He told her, just wait, I will satisfy you, but I have to finish my sadhana. I have to finish my rounds. So because he showed spiritual compassion on her, she ultimately became a devotee. And the lesson that we learn here is that he never compromised on his sadhana. So compassion is good, but one should never compromise on one's sadhana. So there are three lessons that we learn from Bharat Maharaj. The first one is that initial compassion towards the baby deer was not wrong, as we saw in the verse from Padma Puran. And the second one is that apad dharma or emergency dharma is okay, but we have to come back to our primary dharma. In this particular case, Bharat Maharaj had already renounced his family members, he had renounced his kingdoms, he had renounced his citizens. So his responsibility as a caretaker was already done. So there was no reason for him to again become the caretaker of a deer. That was just his apad dharma. He had to take care during that emergency, but he had to focus back on Bhagavad Dharma, which is something that he missed. He got so caught up in taking care that he missed the point of Bhagavad Dharma. And a contemporary example could be like if someone gets into Harvard school and then they go to Harvard school, and after going to Harvard school, they get attached to a puppy. And because of that attachment, they stop studying in their school. It is unfortunate because very similarly, Bharat Maharaj had done all these things. He had done all his prescribed duties. He went to the forest. And because of his attachment to a deer, he gave up the main reason why he went to the forest. So compromising one's sadhana to the extent of completely ignoring it is detrimental to one's devotion. But the good thing about this pastime is that the God's protection was always there. Krishna's protection was always there. Even though he lost his human body in his next life, his spiritual attraction was protected by the Lord. His spiritual attraction did not go away. And then he became extremely careful not to make this mistake again. And then in his next life, after the deer's life, he was born as Jad Bharat. And as we all know, at the end of that life, he went back home, back to Godhead. So now let's look at how Indradyumna Maharaj faced his challenges, his tests. So what should be the mood during absorption? Now, interestingly, this particular pastime of Indradyumna Maharaj occurs in only 5 verses, 8.4.8 to 8.4.12. It's just 5 verses. So I'll try to cover all 5 verses so that we can cover this whole pastime. So in the first verse, this verse glorifies with several adjectives, in fact, 6 ornaments of Indradyumna Maharaj. So Indradyumna Maharaj, just like Bharat Maharaj, he also did his prescribed duties perfectly. And he also eventually decided that now is the time to go to the forest so they can completely focus on exclusive devotion to Krishna. And he did that. He went to the forest. So this verse talks about 6 characteristics or 6 ornaments of Indradyumna Maharaj. So the first one is Jatadaras, or he was completely detached. He was tapasa, austere, apluto, he was experiencing ecstasy. Samarchayam, he was doing perfect worship, and his object of worship was also perfect. He was not worshipping a demigod or anything. He was worshipping Krishna, Achyuta. And he had also taken the vow of silence. He was completely self-controlled. So everything seemed to be going perfectly, right? So he was spiritually fully accomplished. So just like Bharat Maharaj was also on the platform of Bhava, Indradyumna Maharaj said that he had crossed the platform of Ruchi, and he was almost at the platform of Asakti and Bhava, right? So everything, he was spiritually fully accomplished. He was in the forest, he was meditating, he was austere, and so on. At that point, something happened. So expect the unexpected at any moment. At that point, out of nowhere, Agastya Muni enters. Now, Agastya Muni enters, and this is the verse that talks about it. In fact, the word starts with Yadritchaya. Now, this word Yadritchaya is interesting because it occurs several times in the Bhagavatam. So this word basically means out of one's own will. So while Indradyumna Maharaj was engaged in ecstatic meditation, worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the great sage Agastya Muni arrived there, surrounded by his disciples. When the Munis saw that Maharaj Indradyumna was sitting silent in a secluded place, he became very angry. Now, let's analyze this a little bit. Now, typically when an exalted soul like Agastya Muni enters and sees someone meditating and experiencing ecstasy in their meditation, typically you would glorify that person. See how nicely he's meditating, how nicely he's performing bhakti, and so on. But in this particular instance, Agastya Muni had some expectations. In fact, Agastya Muni became extremely angry. So Krishna's will is inconceivable, why this happened and so on. So Agastya Muni expects respect. So just a couple of verses ago, we mentioned 6 ornaments, but Agastya Muni starts cursing Indradyumna Maharaj. In fact, he curses him to become an elephant in his next life. So at the least expected moment in this world, there could be a reason for a conflict. So how do we take this? So we have limited control over our circumstances, but we have unlimited control over our consciousness. So in this particular case, Indradyumna Maharaj had no control over Agastya Muni's arrival. Agastya Muni, as we saw previously, arrived at his own will. And even lesser control over Agastya Muni's expectations and emotions. So even now, when we are dealing with other devotees, we have no control over what they expect. We have no control over what their emotions are. But what we have control over is our own consciousness. So how devotees respond? So how devotees respond, even if they're highly elevated, is not in our control. So as I mentioned previously, Agastya Muni started using very bad adjectives towards Indradyumna Maharaj. He said that he's asadhur, he's not gentle, he's duratma, he's degraded, he's akrita, he's uneducated, and then he's offensive. And then eventually he said that I curse you to become an elephant in your next life. So on one hand, if you look at this pastime, Indradyumna Maharaj did not do anything wrong, right? He just did his prescribed duties properly. He went to the forest, he was meditating in ecstasy, he was worshipping Lord Krishna. All of a sudden, Agastya Muni arrives there, curses him to become an elephant in his next life. So how should we respond? So how should we speak? There are 3 things that we should note on how we should speak. One is, we should not speak unnecessarily. We should try and speak only the truth. And we should speak that which is palatable. But unfortunately, in this Kali Yuga, speaking harshly is a characteristic of Kali Yuga. So we must very carefully guard against how we speak. So the tongue and, just to give an example, the tongue and teeth have an argument at one point. The teeth together, all 32 of them, say that we can easily crush you by our strength. We are strong, you're soft, we can easily defeat you. The tongue responds by saying that you may be strong, but I have more strength than you. If I use my strength, the guy across me with all those muscles, if I say something wrong, that guy can come and punch you, so all of you will be dead in no time. So this is how careful we should be with our tongue. So let's come back to this pastime of Indradyumna Maharaj. The way we respond to situations is how we analyze them. So Shringi analyzed the situation and gave Parikshit Maharaj a curse. Similarly, in this particular pastime, Agastya Muni analyzed the situation and gave Indradyumna Maharaj a curse. So what should we learn from this particular example? So when difficult situations arise in our lives, how should we analyze them? When challenges come in our lives, how should we analyze them? So one way to analyze them in a positive way is to see incidents that occur in our lives as prasad or mercy of the Lord, manifesting for our own purification, our transformation, and our growth. But it's not always easy to see whatever comes in our way as prasad or mercy of the Lord. So one thing that will help us see everything as prasad of the Lord is satsang. So association of devotees helps us understand events in our life as prasad. So one thing that I have practiced in my life is that whenever challenges come across me, difficult situations come across in our lives, what we do is we immediately take shelter of devotees, because it is through that shelter we are reminded that it is the Lord's mercy, and it is happening because we have to get purified, we have to transform ourselves, and we have to grow through this process. But if we leave the association of devotees, our ability to interpret reality in terms of how it is connected to Krishna's will completely disappears. So that is why when Srila Prabhupada was asked, what are the 3 important things that we need to always be aware of as practicing devotees, he said association, association, and association. So let's move on in this particular pastime. So Srila Prabhupada's purport on the response of Indradyumna Maharaj is very enlightening. So there are 5 ways that Indradyumna Maharaj analyzes this particular situation. He says that it is the Lord's desire, it is the Lord's blessings that this happened, it could be because of my past misdeeds, it is a small token reaction for what I deserved, and it is a purification of past contaminations. So this is how he analyzed the situation. And he gave 3 responses. He said, even though I have this curse, it's not that I'm going to leave worshipping you, Krishna. I will continue serving you. I will remain undisturbed, and I will depend on you for everything. In fact, if you think about this, if we were in that position of Indradyumna Maharaj, we would probably leave because we were worshipping Krishna, and suddenly, out of the blue, somebody comes and curses us to be an elephant. But the response of Indradyumna Maharaj is amazing. He says, I will continue to serve Krishna. I will remain undisturbed, and I will depend on you, my Lord, for everything. And he has 2 expectations from from Krishna. He says, Krishna will protect me, and Krishna will ultimately shelter me. And this is exactly what happened. The Lord's protection was seen in his next life. Therefore, although in his next life he got the body of an elephant, because of devotional service in his past life, he remembered how to worship and offer prayers to the Lord. So I'll conclude here with a few points that we mentioned. The first one was about compassion and compromise. So Bharat Maharaj, his compassion was not wrong. His compassion towards the deer was in apad dharma, or in emergency. So that was not wrong. But his compromising on his sadhana was a mistake. Krishna's protection was always there in both these cases, in Bharat Maharaj's case and in Indradyumna Maharaj's case. Even though they lost their human bodies, they did not lose the spiritual attraction that they had developed. We have limited control over our circumstances, but we have unlimited control over our consciousness. And lastly, we should see incidents in our life as the mercy or prasad of the Lord manifesting for our purification, transformation, and growth. Hare Krishna. Let's stop sharing. If anybody has any questions or comments, please share.
Very nice class, Gaur Kumar. I'm not biased, I promise.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. This
Hare
is
Krishna.
Gail.
Hare Krishna, Gail.
Yeah. Just 2 slides ago, you shared a screen which talked about the 3 responses of the devotee to adversities. And I think it was the first 2 out of those 3 that sounded very similar to each other. One of them was that the devotee remains undisturbed. And I think the first one might have been that he does not deviate from his Krishna consciousness or his service. Was that number one?
Yeah.
The point is,
I will continue to serve. I will
yes.
continue to serve Krishna, and I will remain undisturbed. These are the first
yes.
two. Yes.
Yes. So,
so you could continue to serve Krishna. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to see if my understanding is correct. So the first two, they seem similar, because if you will remain undisturbed, then you would continue to serve Krishna. So in remaining undisturbed, does that mean that you don't allow the distress cause you to stop serving, which is why it sounded like the first one?
Okay, so there is an important difference here. And this brings back to the first point that I mentioned between duty and love. So you could continue serving Krishna on the duty platform, right? You could remain disturbed that why did Krishna do this to me? Why did Krishna do this to me? And you can keep doing your service on the duty platform, which is also good, but it is not the ultimate platform. But if you choose to remain undisturbed and you still continue to perform your devotional service in the mood of love, that is the highest. So I will continue serving Krishna, but I will remain undisturbed with whatever has happened. I will not let that affect me because I love Krishna. Whether Krishna embraces me or kicks me, I will still continue to love him. That is the difference.
Okay, so that's clear, but I guess that prompts a second question, which is, in that situation where one is in some kind of distress, is it even possible, I guess depending upon one's level of elevation and consciousness, I'm wondering if it's even possible to like make that choice. I will not serve Krishna just out of duty. I will serve out of love. I feel like that, acting out of love is something that we almost don't have control over it. Either Krishna gives you that spontaneous sentiment in your heart, or he doesn't. And if he doesn't, I feel like the only choice you have is to act or serve out of duty only. Because we can't make the conscious decision, yes, I will now serve out of love. It seems like a sentiment that has to come spontaneously from the heart, which I feel like can only come from Krishna.
It is reciprocal. Of course, we have to be in the mode of goodness. We have to keep doing our service on the duty platform. But always there is this thing of duty versus love. Like, for example, I can give you one example. Like when we are on the altar, there are so many rules. There's so many things that we have to follow. So that could be on the duty platform. But we also have to put our emotions into that activity that we're doing. That is where the love comes. So Buddha Bhava Samanvitaha, Krishna says, we have to use our heart and our intelligence. We have to put in our emotions and intelligence. So both there has to be a good balance between duty and love. And eventually that will completely go into love.
But this is my question: how to bring in emotions that in a way that's not artificial. Right now, I don't have that, sentiment for Krishna. So how to do that in a way that's not artificial?
There are so many ways. I mean, it's different for different people. For some of us, it could be reading Bhagavatam, which can evoke those emotions. For some of us, it could be listening to an ecstatic kirtan. It could be doing some particular service. It's different for different people, Gail. But we have to keep praying. Of course, it has to be reciprocal. Krishna also has to give it to us, and we also have to put an effort. So that's my answer. If anybody else wants to share, you can on this particular question.
What you said was good, Prabhu, but also surrendering to the holy name and chanting and depending on the holy name also helps.
Yes. Yes, Mataji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. This is Malati Priya. Your class was excellent, Prabhu.
Thank
I
you.
was just reminded of Chitraketu and Vritasura. That would be a good example too in your in this context, right, Prabhu?
Can you elaborate, Mataji? Chitraketu?
No, Chitraketu was cursed by Parvati, that he should become a demon.
Yes, he
And
took
that was
credit.
also unfair, it probably it was too, of course, he did something to make fun of them, but it was an unfair curse.
Yes.
But he still was able to tolerate it, and he was still a devotee, even being a demon, and he served his duty.
Also, yes, very nice point. Thank you for sharing that. Also, one we must remember is if Agastya Muni had not cursed Indradyumna Maharaj in this particular case, this particular pastime wouldn't have made it to the Bhagavatam. And because of that, we are able to glorify Indradyumna Maharaj, right? So because they took it so nicely. So again, the same thing with Chitraketu also. If he had not taken the curse properly from Parvati, then we would probably not be reading about him. And so these are important lessons for all of us. I mean, this is the overarching plan of the Lord, and within the plan, these things happen. Any other questions?
Hare Krishna, Gaur Kumar Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Arjuna
Excellent class.
Thank you.
Very, very impressed by the examples that you gave and the way you delivered it so perfectly and thoroughly. I was glad that I made time to attend your Bhagavatam class today. I had one small question, Prabhuji. You said we have no control over the external circumstances,
Limited
but we
control.
have limited control. But we have unlimited control over our consciousness.
Yes.
So could you elaborate on what do you mean by unlimited control over our consciousness? Because we're all in this material conditioned state and we have been influenced by the three modes and all, unless you're in a most elevated state. I don't see how we have control over our consciousness. Could you please explain that and how to develop that actually?
Mataji. So in this particular context, we have, of course, we have no control over others' emotions, right? If somebody is scolding us or something, somebody is chastising us for some service that we did wrongly, we have a choice on how we can react. And that is where, and based on our consciousness, on our maturity, we can react in a way which is not harmful for us, nor for the others. So that is what I meant. So we have no control, or we have very limited control over the external circumstances, but we have control over how we react. We have control of what we speak based on our maturity. So that is what I wanted to say. That particular thing.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, this is Malati Priya again. I just had a question. Can you do anything to reverse that curse, like you pray to Krishna hard or chant more? Will that be reversed by any chance? Will Krishna have mercy on that devotee?
So that's a good question, Mataji. In one sense, devotees of the Lord don't care so much about curses, because ultimately what they care about is going back to Krishna. So whether we get cursed, whether we are put in a very degraded situation in our lives, it doesn't matter in one sense. We are just completely focusing on the lotus feet of the Lord. One example that comes to my mind is Haridas Thakur. So Haridas Thakur, when he was asked about the benefits of the holy names, he mentioned, and somebody said, of course, holy names, if you chant the holy names, you'll get liberated. But Haridas Thakur immediately put it down. He said, by even a shadow of the holy name, one can get liberation. But that is not what devotees look for. Devotees look for Shuddhanam, or pure chanting, which will take us back home, back to Godhead. Of course, we are not expecting that, but that leads us to prema, which is way, way higher than liberation or any curse or anything that can happen to us. So devotees are not so much focused on this. Like, for example, even in Purushottam Mass, which is currently, there are so many benedictions that are given. If you do this, you'll get this, and so on. But devotees are not focused so much on what we are going to get. Our whole focus is just to improve our love or increase our love towards Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, Hare Krishna. Like we are on time, so just wanted to
Prabhu,
make sure, like.
Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Gaur Kumar Prabhu ki jai.
Jai.
Very nice.
Thank you, Gaur Kumar Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
श्री जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा देवी की जय, श्री की जय। शिव जय जय गौराचांदे, आरती का शोभा। शिव जय जय गौराचांदे, आरती का शोभा। जगमान लोभा, जहान विकट वने। जगमान लोभा, अकीन निताय चान। आमे गदाधारा, अकीन निताय चान। आमे गदाधारा, निकटे अद्वैताश्रिनी। वास छत्रधारा, निकटे अद्वैताश्रिनी। वास छत्रधारा, वसियाचे गौराचान। रत्न सिंहासने, वसियाचे गौराचान। रत्न सिंहासने, आरती करे ना ब्रह्मा, आदिदेव गाने। आरती करे ना ब्रह्मा, आदिदेव गाने। नर हरि आदि करे, चामर ढुलाया। नर हरि आदि करे, चामर ढुलाया। संजय मुकुंद बासु, कोशाधिकाय। संजय मुकुंद बासु, कोशाधिकाय। शंखा बाजे, घंटा बाजे, बाजे करताल। शंखा बाजे, घंटा बाजे, बाजे करताल। माधुरा मृदंगा बाजे, परम रसाल। ज्वाला जलदेशे बनमाला और झलमाला जलदेशे बनमाला और झलमाला शिवा शुक नारदा प्रेम गदगाद शिवा शुक नारदा प्रेम गदगाद काकाते विनोद देखे गौरार संपाद काकाते विनोद देखे गौरार संपाद श्रीला काकाते विनोद देखे गौरार संपाद काकाते विनोद देखे गौरार संपाद गौरांगे रारतिक शोभा जग जन मन लोभा गौरांगे आरतिक शोभा जग जन मन लोभा गौरांगे रारतिक शोभा जग जन मन लोभा गौरांगे आरतिक शोभा जग जन मन लोभा जग जन मन लोभा जग जन मन लोभा नित्य गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिते नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिते नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Haraya Namah, Krishna Yadavaya Namah, Hare Haraya Namah, Krishna Yadavaya Namah, Hare Haraya Namah, Krishna Yadavaya Namah,
Jai Om Vishnu Paramahansa Parabrajakacharya Jasatara Sata Shri Srimad Divine Grace Shila Bhai Charana Ravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Paramahansa Parabrajakacharya Jasatara Sata Shri Srimad Divine Grace Shila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Ravinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se Gaur Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giva Gopadan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shrimati Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai. Lord Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Devi Ki Jai. Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai. Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai. Lord Nrsimha Deva Ki Jai. Shri Shalagram Shilas Ki Jai. Shri Giriraj Maharaj Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Prabhu, should we begin?
Yes.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Praladadaine.
Praladadaine.
Hiranyakashipurvakshaha.
Hiranyakashipurvakshaha.
Shilatankanakalaye.
Shilatankanakalaye.
Ito Narsimho Parato Narsimho.
Ito Narsimho Parato Narsimho.
Yato Yato Yami Tato Narsimho.
Yato Yato Yami Tato Narsimho.
Bahe Narsimho Hirdaye Narsimho.
Bahir Narsimho Hirdaye Narsimho.
Narasimha Madim Sharanam Prapadim.
Narasimha Madim Sharana Prapade.
Tava Kara Kamalavare Nakama Bhuta Shringam Talita Hiranyakashipu Tanubringam Keshavadirta Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare.
Tav kara kamalavare nakam abhyuda shringam dalita hiranyakashipu tanubringam keshavadirta narhari rupa jai jagadisha hare jai jagadisha hare jai jagadisha hare.
Jaya Narsimhadev, Jaya Narsimhadev, Jaya Narsimhadev, Jaya Narsimhadev.
Jaya Narsimhadev, Jaya Narsimhadev, Jaya Narsimhadev, Jaya Narsimhadev.
Jaya Bhakta Prahlad, Jaya Bhakta Prahlad. Bhakta Prahlad, Jaya Bhakta Prahlad.
Jaya Bhakta Prahlad, Jaya Bhakta Prahlad, Bhakta Prahlad, Jaya Bhakta Prahlad.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada,
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 Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada.
Shishi Vigna Shishi Nashinde Bhagwan ki
Jai,
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai, Bhakta Prahlad ki Jai.
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us on our Sunday program this evening. Unfortunately, we do not have any free sponsors for today. So if anybody is interested in sponsoring the feast for today,
Prabhuji, I will sponsor.
Hare Krishna.
Hey, bol.
You,
Right?
Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhu, you are sharing something we can't see, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji, actually, I am also having some issues trying to share, but never mind, Prabhuji, I'll continue. I was trying for some time. I think there's some intermittent issue.
No problem.
So if anyone of you is interested in sponsoring for any of our upcoming Sunday programs, you can sponsor for only $125. And for that, you can contact His Grace Mayare Mohan Prabhuji or Her Grace Jiva Mataji at 8602897254, or you can reach them if you have any other questions. A quick reminder of our upcoming programs. We are already underway with Purushottam Adhik Mas. That's continuing till October 16th. And this is a very auspicious time. Our spiritual benefits are increased. You can engage in more spiritual activities. That we chant more rounds of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra or Srila Bhagavad.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Srila Prabhupada.
Prabhuji, you are breaking a lot, so.
Is it better now, Prabhuji?
Yeah, I mean, little, but yeah, just to let you know. Yeah, you can continue, Prabhu.
Okay, sorry about that, Prabhuji. I'll just start. And registration is for $111. Registrations close on September 30th. So those of us who are interested and have not yet registered, please register by September. Yes, Prabhuji.
No, I think you are still breaking. I mean, we are not able to hear clearly.
It's really difficult to know anything you're saying.
Yes. If
Rasras, go.
Sorry, Prabhu.
Did you write down maybe in the chat just the topics and someone else can say it?
Maybe do you have Amrita Keli Mataji, or she's not there?
She's coming, Prabhu, 1 minute.
Okay.
Well, is everybody okay?
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, everybody. Thank you very much for attending the Sunday program this evening. I believe we don't have a fee sponsor for today. We got one fee sponsor. Yes. So Devi Priya Mataji is the fee sponsor for today. A loud Hari Bol for her.
Haribo.
I just quickly want to mention that although we are not having in-person programs at the temple, but DT worship for our lordships is still going on. Every morning, they have an offering, arti, and DT dressing, flowers, everything is continuing as it was before the pandemic hit us. So, we do look for program sponsors on a regular basis. So if anybody else is interested, in addition to Devi Priya Mataji, either for today or for upcoming Sundays, then you can, either speak up now or put a message in the chat window and, basically share through the chat window.
Just look at the beautiful garlands that they have today.
Yes, really nice garlands. Prakash Prabhu and Rashmi are putting their heart and soul. Like every Sunday when we look at we have the darshan, I realize that they're outdoing themselves.
And Radha Preeti, she helped, and Sevanandini made Srila Prabhupada's today.
Okay. So a loud Hari Bol for Prakash Prabhu, Rashmi, Sevanandi Mataji and Radha Preeti for helping with the garland seva. Hari Bol. Moving on to the other announcements, registration for Vishnu Sahasranama is being extended till September 30th.
And Jai Radhe did the vases.
The flower arrangement has been done by Lord Jagannath's flower girl, Jai Radhe. Hari Bol. On our website, there is a page that talks about our weekly programs. In addition to what was being offered till last week, we have added Brahma Samhita chanting, which is included in the same time slot as the Narsim Kavacha recitation. So in addition to Narsim Kavach, we are also chanting Brahma Samhita prayers these days. And you can go to the website for more details on the timings of that. And we are doing this for the month of Purushottam, reading Srimad Bhagavatam or chapter 15 from Bhagavad Gita, or chanting Brahma Samhita prayers is highly recommended for this auspicious month of Purushottam. Upcoming festivals, we are celebrating Govardhan Puja on November 15th. It will be an indoor program, due to weather constraints. Attendance will be limited. The program will be at the Glastonbury Temple, our new temple. There will be online program as well through Facebook and Zoom. There'll be more details, but I know that the indoor program will be limited only to registered devotees. So, this is more like save the date announcement, and please stay tuned for more details. The program will include circumambulation of our Giriraj Shila. You can see him right there in the center if you're taking darshan right now. Giriraj Shila. There will be Abhishek of our Giriraj. There will be Chappan Bhog offering, and Prashadam will be distributed in 2-go boxes. We will not be honoring Prashadam at the venue. Sponsorship is $151. If you are interested, you can again speak up now, or you can put a message in the chat window, and Rasraj Prabhu or somebody else will make a note of it. It's also, the celebration comes during the month of Kartik. So austerity and charity for the pleasure of the Lord are highly recommended for the month of Kartik as well. So we would encourage, devotees to sponsor the program, Diwali and Govardhan Puja program. Fast breaking time for tomorrow is 6:49 a.m. And that's it from my end. Pyare Prabhu, is there anything else you would like to add to the announcements?
So, one thing, Mataji, we will be chanting Chaurashtakam after this end of this program.
Okay.
Yeah.
So right after the program is over, Prabhu?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
yeah, please stay tuned. After the temple Sunday program is over, we will continue with the recitation of Chaurashtakam prayers. Again, Chaurashtakam prayers by our Acharya Bilava Mungul Thakur. It's a recommended prayer which is sung in the month during the month of Purushottam for the pleasure of the Lordships.
I'd like to add just about Govardhan Puja. It's pretty much just a virtual program, but rather than just have one or two devotees, we're going to have a few more devotees, and we're going to have it at the larger temple. So it's mostly virtual for 90% of our congregation.
Okay. Prabhu, do you have like a number, like 10, 12 at the location? I just want to make sure that, we set expectations among the congregation accordingly.
Yes, I do have a number.
Okay. Are you willing to share the number?
Not at this time.
Okay.
The number may change, but so I don't want to say anything yet.
Okay. All right. All right. I think it's safe to say that it's a variable number, and it will be a number based on how many devotees are needed at the temple for the services. So
that's mostly it.
Yeah, so that means, so basically the temple is encouraging online participation for Govardhan Puja.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Am I audible now?
Yes, Dev Prabhu.
Yeah, sorry about that, and thank you for covering, Mataji. I just wanted to add that now we also have Brahma Samhita chanting as part of our online programs, along with Narsimha Kavacha.
Yes. And one more, Prabhuji, we are continuing Srimad Bhagavatam class every day morning. So just an addition to our daily programs.
It would probably be easy to just say where all this is, and they can go to somewhere to see every single program, what it is, because it's a lot to remember.
It's in the website, so Mataji already told that, so they can, yeah.
Do we have the chant for the feast sponsor?
Okay, so we'll have chanting now for the feast sponsor. It's Kirti, Tirthpad Prabhu and Madhubhashni Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Jai Jai Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. हरिनाथ संकीर्तन की, श्रीला प्रभुपाद की.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Gaur Premanande.
Hari Hari Bol.
Our program sponsor Sudevi Priya Mataji and family ki.
Jai.
Jai.
Very nice kirtan.
Very nice chanting, Kirti. Very nice kirtan.
Thank you, Mataji.
Very nice kirtan.
So who's leading us into Chaurashtakam prayers now?
Yes, Madhav Kanta Prabhu on the screen.
Okay.
Prabhu, can we start?
Yes, Prabhu.
Vraje prasidham navamita charam gopangananam chadukula chauram. Vraje prasidham
navamita charam gopagana
Aneka janmar chitta papa chauram chauragandhyam purusham namami. Aneka janmar chitta papa chauram chauragandhyam purusham namami. Sri श्रीराधिकाया हृदयस्य चौरं नवाम्बुदशा मलकान्तिचौरम् श्रीराधिकाया हृदयस्य चौरं नवाम्बुदशा मलकान्तिचौरम् पदाश्रितानां च समस्तचौरं चौराग्रगण्यं पुरुषं नमामि पदाश्रितानां च समस्तचौरं चौराग्रगण्यं पुरुषं नमामि अकिञ्चनीकृत्य पदाश्रितं या करोति दीक्षं पतिगेहहीनम् अकिञ्चनीकृत्य पदाश्रितं या करोति दीक्षं पतिगेहहीनम् केनापि आहो भीषणचौरैद्रिक् दृष्टश्रुतो वा न जगत्रयेऽपि केनापि आहो भीषणचौरैद्रिक् दृष्टश्रुतो वा न जगत्रयेऽपि यदि अनामापि हरति अशेषम् गिरिप्रसारन् अपि पापराशिन् यदि मापि हरति अशेषम् गिरिप्रसारन् अपि पापराशिन् आश्चर्यरूपो ननु चौरैद्रिक् दृष्टश्रुतो वा न मया कदापि आश्चर्यरूपो ननु चौरैद्रिक् दृष्टश्रुतो वा न मया कदापि दानं च मानं च अतीन्द्रियाणि प्राणं चरित्वा मम सर्वम् एव दानं च मानं च अतीन्द्रियाणि प्राणं चरित्वा मम सर्वम् एव बनायसे गोत्रादितोऽद्य चौर त्वं भक्तिधाम नासि मया निरोध बनायसे गोत्रादितोऽद्य चौर त्वं भक्तिधाम नासि मया निरोध चीनात्सि घोरं यमपाशबन्धं वीनात्सि भीमं भवपाशबन्धम् चीनात्सि घोरं यमपाशबन्धं वीनात्सि भीमं भवपाशबन्धम् चीनात्सि सर्वस्य समस्तबन्धं नैवात्मनो भक्तकृतं तु बन्धम् चीनात्सि सर्वस्य समस्तबन्धं नैवात्मनो भक्तकृतं तु बन्धम् मनमानसे तामस राशि घोरे कारागृहे दुःखमये निबधा मनमानसे तामस राशि घोरे कारागृहे दुःखमये निबधा लभस्व हे चौर हरे चिराय स्वचौरदोषोचितम् एव दण्डम् लभस्व हे चौर हरे चिराय स्वचौरदोषोचितम् एव दण्डम् रजे प्रसीदम् चौरम् गोवानानां च दूरचौरम् रजे प्रसीदम् अनेक जन्मार्जित पाप चौरम चौरागण्यं पुरुषं नमामि अनेक जन्मार्जित पाप चौरम चौरागण्यं पुरुषं नमामि कारागृहे वस सदा हृदये मदीये मद्भक्ति पाश दृढ़ा बंधन निश्चल सन त्वां कृष्ण हे प्रलय कोटि शतन्तरेऽपि सर्वस्व चौरा हृदयान्न हि मोचयामि। Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. I offer pranam to that foremost of thieves who is famous in Vraja as the butter thief, and he who steals the gopis' clothes, and who, for those who take shelter of him, steals the sins which have accrued over many lifetimes. I offer pranam to the foremost of thieves who steals Srimati Radhika's heart, who steals the dark luster of a fresh rain cloud, and who steals all the sins and sufferings of those who take shelter of his feet.
He turns his surrendered devotees into paupers and wandering homeless beggar. Alas, such a fearsome thief has never been seen or heard in all the three worlds.
Mere utterance of his name purges one of a mountain of sins. Such as astonishingly wonderful thief I have never seen or heard of anywhere.
You cut the terrible loose of Yamaraj. You
O
severed the
thief,
dreadful
having
noose of
stolen my
material
wealth, my
existence,
honor, my
and you
senses,
slash
my
everyone
life, my
material.
everything, where can you run to? I have caught you with the rope of my devotion.
You cut the terrible nose of Yamaraj. You sever the dreadful nose of material existence, and you slash everyone's material bondage, but you are unable to cut the knot fastened by your loving devotee.
Chaitanya, you read this one.
O stealer of my everything, O thief, today I have imprisoned you in the miserable prison house of my heart, which is very fearful due to the terrible darkness of my ignorance. And there for a very long time you will remain, receiving appropriate punishment for your crimes of thievery.
Oh, Krishna, thief of my earth, the news of my devotion, remain in prison time. You will continue to reside in the prison house of my earth, because I will not release you for millions of aeons.
Bilva Mangal Thakur ki.
Thank you, Madhav Kant Prabhu Chaitanya, for reciting Taurashtakam. So,
Raj Prabhu, is the program over now?
yes, Mataji, done from our side. If you have anything, you can.
Okay, now I was just going to conclude by saying thank you very much, everybody, for participating for the Sunday program this evening. We hope that you will take advantage of all ISKCON Connecticut's online programs and classes. And this is the month of Purushottam. Whatever little austerity or charity we perform for the pleasure of the Lordship, the reciprocation by the Lord is multiplied many folds. So please consider sponsoring a Sunday program during the month of Purushottam. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama.